Hello, and welcome to this video on aging. Again, this time on the aging of a small batch of home brew. This could be due to problems caused by the type of brew, the volume of brew, time constraints, and the finish desired. Most aging falls into one of two approaches. Either small 5 to 10 litre bottles put into a dark place to age for months. Alternatively, large volumes in the range of tens to hundreds of litres in large steel vats, glass carboys or wooden barrels, needing a specialised location to store and age for years. A happier median for the home brewer is needed, both the bulk and small scale aging processes. An important idea that needs stating before anything else is the use of multiple aging samples. Something like the allocation of a main fermentation of 5 parts and 5 single parts for aging separately. This is only limited by the size of the fermentation and the desire to test. This video will focus on aging small 500ml bottles, or half a litre. This goes to the evidence available from spirit aging and the standardized size of most beer bottles. Couple this with evidence from industry in half-size wine bottles, and a case exists for aging most homebrew in small volumes. One other note for aging is the use of both a modestly high amount of alcohol, 8 or more %, and the presence or expectation of a strong flavour profile immediately after brewing. Aging will moot most of the flavours, so starting from a strong place is better. The first important thing is consistency. When making the bottles for aging, they need to be the same from the start. Anything else will lead to inconsistent and unreliable results. Think of it as a game of opening a bottle, knowing that at any stage one of them may be filled with a skunk scent, or perhaps more accurately, Russian roulette with your beer. This can be minimized by mixing everything in a secondary fermenter and then bottling, or mixing it in smaller quantities as part of the larger brew, such as when creating aging partitions. This will ensure all these small flavor compounds are evenly distributed, and once they are in bottles, begin to age consistently across the entire batch. The second thing is temperature and agitation. The temperature must be kept stable. This prevents the formation of unwanted esters. Esters are partially responsible for bad tasting and smelling brew. The general advice for aging is somewhere along these lines. Keep the bottles cool, in the dark, and stationary. If time is not a concern, this approach is best. It has low to no risk, and all of the benefits apart from the time it takes. In order to streamline the process, these half-litre bottles can be heated slightly, such as storage in a consistently warm room, 25 degrees Celsius, and then agitated on a regular basis. As mentioned previously, this method, when combined with oxygenation of the bottles, can speed up the aging process. In the case of spirits, this went from a 20-year production time to 2 years. However, the addition of oxygen affects different brews differently, but more on that later. The third significant factor is the treatment used. Each bottle can and should be treated the same unless experimenting. Although generally a bad idea, the mixing of a brew before bottling is a good idea. For example, gently agitating it will mix everything, leaving it to stand for a day then bottling. When you go to bottle, the distributions of slightly differently weighted molecules will be largely homogeneous. Another example is when you are aging with oak chips. If doing so, sets of 3 or 4 bottles, creating a gradient is a useful option. That is a group of 4 bottles with a unit of oak chips, for example 5 grams, then having another unit that is 4 bottles with twice as much, and so on. This allows you to accurately predict the amount of oak chips or other similar adjuncts that you are adding to flavor your bottle and age it over time. By using a small bottle, it creates a large difference in the volume to surface area of the wet aging process. A simple enough theory that means the more surface area in a given space to volume, the more quickly it transfers between the two parts of a system. This means the inside of a barrel or bottle and the liquid that fills it. By adding oak chips as an example to a small bottle, it turns the equation around a little bit. The chips are still the barrel's surface, but it becomes a question of how much each fraction of the barrel is exposed to the brew. Using this method, it makes a 3D measurement, not a 2D measurement. Aging is important to consider in something like a dark beer, Ales are an example of this. Dark beer has a poor result when aged in an oxygen-rich environment. This owes to the malt flavour molecules producing an unintended chemical reaction. A light beer is less likely to undergo this reaction, but also ages less well. Generally speaking, the oxygenation process reduces the hop flavour profile in very short order in a light beer. For a similar reason, cider does not age well. A large part of the flavour profile is simply not a good combination for oxygen, especially over a period of 6 to 12 months. Spirits are a good candidate for short-term aging like this, but requires experimentation to work out. These three factors are the most important when it comes to aging, particularly in small volumes. Be aware that you are dealing with a small volume to a relatively large amount of whatever material you are adding to age it with, that it is a very, very small bottle size that can very quickly react to whatever foreign matter is in there, such as oxygen, and that you need to have a consistent set of bottles produced in a similar manner, and that comparing batches year on year is an important way to look at this. Storing multiple samples to be drawn out of storage over time is another important thing to be aware of. Thank you for watching this video. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions you may have below.